Wayne Doorband here for the bi-weekly NTP C.E.E.D webinar Huddle that we hold here at our Northern Colorado headquarters in Loveland, Colorado, both live here at our site and also going out over the web to those of you that are watching. Enjoy what we have for you today.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the semi-weekly or bi-weekly huddle for Nourish the Planet and C.E.E.D. This is a new face for you. This is Bob Christador, and I'm hosting today's event for Wayne Doorband, who is your normal host, and Wayne and I are involved in several businesses together, and I'm pleased to be able to be on today to host this event. You're not going to see very much of me because right now I'm going to introduce our guest from Global Food Exchange, Jason Aubrey. Hello, Jason. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Bob. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Nourish the Planet and C.E.E.D and Wayne as well. I know he couldn't be here today, but it's great to join you.
Well, I understand he's enjoying himself at the electronics event in Las Vegas and probably rolling some dice from time to time. So you're in Denver, and for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm in Tucson, Arizona, so we're both in the mountains, only mine are a little warmer than yours.
Yes. It's Denver's. We've been trying to get out of the freezing temperatures, but it's pretty cold right now.
Okay. Well, you're a little higher elevation. We're about half as high as you are, so we do have nice weather. So any of you who are into golf, Tucson's the place to be this time of year. So with that, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about you, yourself, and you and I have known each other for a bit here when you used to work with Wayne, and now you're with Global Food Exchange. So give us a little background about Global Food Exchange and your role there, and then I'm going to ask you some other questions about your background.
Okay. Well, Global Food Exchange is kind of on the leading edge for both large-scale food supply and disaster relief. We focus on food, water, and shelter, and we try to work. We are a for-profit and benevolent company, but we work with NGOs and governments to help them save money and eventually save more lives while they're doing it.
Okay. Now you just threw an acronym out there that I don't understand, so forgive me, everyone, for asking stupid questions. What's an NGO?
And thank you for calling me on it. I realize an NGO would be a non-governmental organization or a charity. Here when I'm stuck in my office, I start throwing out acronyms. We were just talking how the love of acronyms, and most people don't know what that means. So,
well, give us an example of what an NGO is.
So an NGO could be you've got Feed the Children, you've got CARE, you've got groups like IDRN who are out there. They're the groups
again.
International Disaster Response Network. They're the boots on the ground when a disaster happens that are feeding people. You've got Red Cross, which everybody knows. Those are the people when there's a disaster and you turn on CNN, which I'm not going to explain that acronym, and you see people that are helping people in need. A lot of times it is an NGO or a charity which is supported by USAID, and a lot of times it's military and government support. But so it's hand in hand. Disaster, it's kind of all hands on deck.
Yeah. So we're going to digress a little bit. You've told us a little bit about your current business. Tell us about you yourself and how you got involved in this.
Well, I'm originally from Michigan, and I've got a background that I guess you end up in the place you should be. My background is in three areas, which is banking, finance, capital, which is counting as one, manufacturing, and in food. Just my career took me into those directions. Through that, I got to know actually Wayne, who hosts this show, and Richard Lackey, the founder of Global Food Exchange, and we worked on some food projects together. And I ended up, deciding to leave Detroit and the manufacturing world that I was in, and head out to Denver and work in the food space. I'm the oldest of four. I graduated from Michigan State. I'm a proud third-generation Michigan State Spartan, and we did all right in the Cotton Bowl. So
Good for you. Okay, how's the basketball team? I'm a big basketball fan.
Usually we're pretty good. We've got a young team this year, and we've been struggling a little bit. But we as long as we come on in March, I'm fine. So
Good, good. Well, I'm in Tucson, and we have the University of Arizona here, which has a great program. And I went to the University of Dayton, and the two coaches from Dayton and from Arizona are brothers. So we're
Dayton
pretty
Flyers.
clued into college basketball.
Okay. Well, the Dayton Flyers, they always have a good team. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think you covered what was the one thing in your life that influenced you to go in the direction that you're going into, and I'm very interested in the connection to food and how you actually got there.
And I'm really glad you asked that. I was in Detroit for the majority of my life. I still have strong ties there. I have a lot of love for that area, and I was there working in banking, specifically working with manufacturing groups through the crash. And I watched a city have its entire industry completely go into nuclear winter. And what does that do to a crash of that magnitude? I then went right out of the frying pan during the crash from finance into manufacturing and worked with an auto company to get them through the crash. And that was very, very interesting. And it shaped me in a way that I wanted to do something, not that manufacturing in America is not doing good, because it's a backbone of our country, but I wanted to do something that had an impact, that was helping people in need, but also was creating jobs. And sustainability, sustainable agriculture, and food are huge concerns moving forward in this world. And there are a lot of jobs that are going to be created and have been created out of that. And I really wanted to be on the forefront of that. And the best way for me to utilize all of my skills was kind of in the cutting-edge food industry.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I never really thought about food and sustainability before I met Wayne, and so he's certainly opened my eyes. And he and I have a business together to help people who have been through that nuclear winter you talk about, to build a balanced life, and food and nutrition are one of the principles of that. Although I think what you're really speaking about is really more of a global issue of making sure that everybody has the opportunity to have enough food to sustain themselves, as opposed to us people in the United States that have way more than we should have.
Well, it kind of goes hand in hand. Sustainable agriculture and food sustainability goes right into our focus. While it's disaster relief, we really focus on inefficiency in the food and disaster markets. And you've got this inefficiency in food that sits right next to what you need to be sustainable in food. And we'll get into it later, but you've got countries in Africa that 40% of their agricultural production is wasted. Parts of Latin America, because it all comes to fruition so fast, and then they don't know what to do with that product. So as I'll get into, we use a technology that allows food to be stored with 99% of its value for up to 25 years. So I'm out of, we work with sustainability people, but I'm in the efficiency space in food.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, I know you've got a video you want to share with everybody, so why don't we start with that, and then it's yours to lead.
Our planet averages over 600 natural disasters per year, which accounts for approximately 200 million people per year requiring aid and almost 30 million people being displaced. According to the United Nations, 2.8 billion people per decade are affected by disasters. Yes, your math is correct. That is half of the world's population. You have a 1 in 2 chance of being affected by a disaster. Global disasters accounted for damages in excess of US $1.4 trillion. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and floods are just some of the problems creating the need for emergency relief that the world faces today. After a disaster, local food and other supplies in an affected area are often destroyed. The need for life-saving supplies such as water, food, and shelter are urgent and pronounced. Fatalities occur without access to clean waters within 3 to 4 days. The #1 cause of hospitalization is contaminated water, made worse by malnutrition. Charities and NGOs wonderfully execute the mobilization of millions of workers and volunteers in order to remedy these crises. The boots on the ground are ready to go, but they cannot do it alone. They need help. These organizations face huge shortage of relief provisions during time of crises because readily deployable items are in short supply. The problem is twofold. Number one, manufacturers cannot produce the massive quantities of food and other supplies needed fast enough. And number two, government, NGOs, and other aid organizations just don't have the funds to independently create and maintain the network of stored food, water, and other necessities that are needed to be sufficiently disaster ready on their own. The absence of a prepared network forces government agencies and NGOs to scour the supply chains to get any form of relief to the affected area, but inevitably face extensive shortages. As an international community, we need to take steps in advance to fill the need for emergency preparedness. We need to deliver victims what they need, where they need it, when they need it. Is there a solution to make the jobs of the NGOs easier and save lives in the process? Global Food Exchange is the solution. In a unique free market model, the GFE has brought together entrepreneurs, suppliers, investment funds, relief organizations, and logistics companies to establish an expansive global network of disaster relief supplies, whose goal is to offer products that provide the most benefit to the most vulnerable among us. Global Food Exchange functions as a manufacturer and master distributor of relief products, while providing an electronic market exchange that allows buyers and sellers around the world the opportunity to locate and efficiently purchase critical relief supplies. Global Food Exchange offers immediate access to highly nutritious food, water filtration systems, shelter systems, and much more for post-disaster relief. Logistical issues are significantly mitigated by offering preloaded, palletized 40-foot ISO containers that can be deployed in whole to a single site via truck, train, cargo ship, or airplane. They can also be rapidly broken down for multiple site deliveries via helicopter and small watercraft. By planning ahead and producing on a regular basis, distributors and end users benefit from the deep discounts of buying through a centralized exchange. Now, in partnership with the Global Food Exchange, millions of volunteers, NGOs, and government agencies have the ability to do their work and be more efficient in their relief efforts through this expanding network of prepared food, water, power, and shelter reserves. The Global Food Exchange is only as strong as its participants. Learn how you fit into our global relief network and become a part of the solution that will save lives.
Well, it's an interesting video.
What we did is, what we're trying to do is bring together the investment community. We're trying to bring together the NGOs or the charitable organizations, the food producers. Sometimes it's us, other times we're the master distributor, and we're trying to bring together all of that to serve into the disaster community.
So I was looking at your board of directors. I see quite a few people that I recognize the name, including Dave Keller.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we'll go into the board. We feel we built a world-class board, and they've been a great help in growing both relationships on the distribution side and as well as helping us launch.
How long have you been around?
We have been around. We were in development for 3 years, and actually this would now be our 2-year anniversary as of this January.
Perfect.
So basically, Bob, as we talked a little bit earlier, our company, we're a benevolent company. We work with NGOs and governments, meaning Global Food Exchange has a fixed margin. So we protect ourselves and the people we serve by having a fixed margin, being transparent, and that allows, when in a volatile market like food with other commodities, allows us to kind of smooth out that volatility curve and try to stop some of those price spikes that happen when you have disasters. This is a disclaimer. We will be talking about some financial aspects, but we are not soliciting anybody for investment or giving investment advice. Okay, so once again, starting with a disclaimer, we are not soliciting for investment, and we are not giving investment advice. Although there will be financial components we talk about, we're not here to do that. So the Global Food Exchange is really a free market solution to one of the world's problems, and that's really what we focus on. We're free market solutions and strategic benevolence. It was established to facilitate socially responsible yet compelling business opportunities for our network. The reason that we do what we do and we're here day in and day out is that every decade 2 billion people are displaced. That's 1/3 of the world's population goes without food or water for 30 days or more every decade. I mean, that's a staggering number. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to capture the stable growth of food by investing in differentiated long-life assets. We want to address the inefficiencies associated with emergency relief in our current food system. We want to offer cost-effective solutions and provide expedited relief. So if we look at food as an asset class and we use an investment fund model to raise our assets, food is the most stable asset class on the planet. If you look at the blue line going across the screen, trending slightly upward, that is a CPI food and beverage index. That's an aggregate index of what, everything that would go into the staples of food in America on a daily basis. That index.
That's just U.S. then?
That is a U.S., but there's also CPIs globally. This is the U.S. Index right now.
Okay.
There are other global markets that we look at when we are international. The CPI, that's the red line going across the screen. That's the bond index. That is historically the most stable market that you could invest in, and that looks fairly volatile for me. We talked earlier, Bob, about the Great Recession. That gray line right there is the Great Recession. Food was a net positive, but in the past we have never been able to invest into that. So if we take a longer look at the CPI and we go back 50 years, if you go back 50 years, the CPI Food and Beverage Index averages 4.2% per year. Every one of these gray lines going down is a market downturn. So how do we get into that market and create an asset that allows people to invest directly into food in a way that they have not before, and then also allows that food to be used in a different way to serve more people? What we created at the Global Food Exchange was called a food relief vault, and we'll get into what those assets are further in the presentation. Allows us to invest directly tied to food prices.
Before you move on, can you expand upon the blue line and what it's comprised of? Is that an expense line? I assume it is.
That is the average price of a basket of food staples. So it's an index just like any other index, and that index.
So that's the classic inflationary CPI.
Yes. Okay. Yes, it is. There's 7 factors that are contributing to this price escalation. We've got grain in short supply globally. Russia, they were historically a net exporter. They're now a net importer. China, Russia, the Middle East, many nations around the world are buying agricultural land in South America and Africa to stem the supply issues they're having with grain and other staples. You've got crop yields have peaked both domestically and globally, and usually you have a technology advance that will get crop yields to increase, and we haven't had one for about 20 years. And I don't know that technology can advance. We have to really rework our systems. Because of the crop yields peaking and we're continually making the soils work harder and harder, we've got soils losing nutrients. Because of all of this, you've got aquifer depletion globally. The Ogala Aquifer, which is the main aquifer under the United States, has now passed the tipping point. We are taking more out than we put in. You've got oil prices. Actually, this is a little bit old. Oil prices are very volatile. So you've got rising energy costs, or you've got volatile energy costs that are putting pressure on these systems. And then we have food reserves shrinking. We are globally less than a 1-year supply down from a 5-year supply, which is what we had historically for the majority of the 20th century. And then we've got natural disasters increasing. And we've got some data that'll show that that is significantly increasing. I don't want to get into a debate on global warming or global cooling, but we do feel that there is climate volatility, which is causing more and more disasters on a daily basis. If we look here at disasters, over there on the left-hand side, you've got natural disasters annually going up, and right now we have over 400 major natural disasters per year. Now, that is UN response natural disasters. If you go to the insurance companies of what they feel qualifies as a natural disaster, that number goes up to around 900 natural disasters per year. And you can say what you want, but they're happening more and more frequently. The market that creates for groups, for the food supply groups and other supply groups, is about a $32 billion annual need for relief. That's what's globally needed around the world for relief. The majority of that goes unfunded, but there is a $5 to $7 billion allocated funded need by the UN and other governments around the globe, and that goes unused. So we're going to get into the efficiency. What you have is a funded marketplace without the amount and level of supply that exists to satisfy that funding. And that's kind of where Global Food Exchange and other organizations like us come into play. So if you look at, as we're talking about the global need for a solution, this is a risk map from an insurance group. As you can see, the Pan-Pacific region is in red. Interestingly enough, the United States comes in as the second highest risk area. The reason why it doesn't really affect a day-to-day individual in the United States is we've got a fairly good system in place, but every 5 to 10 years we do have a major one that catches us. You've got the Katrinas, the Sandys, and the like. But the United States is at significant risk and continues to be so. What we also talk about a little bit and is on the forefront now, if you think about things going on in the news, is beyond disaster. You've got a food security issue evident globally, as we talked about China, Russia, the Middle East that are buying ag lands and that to help with their supply. You've got conflict going on. Every day everybody talks about the Syrian refugee crisis or the crisis in Syria. What's there is you've got an entire country where you've got refugees spilling out all around the border of Syria. Well, if you put an extra 1 million people into another country that didn't need to support them before, that puts huge stresses on the resources of that country. So places like Lebanon, Jordan, and other places that have over 1 million refugees inside their borders, they're having trouble feeding not only their own people, but those people as well. And then you've got Ebola, which comes and goes in our news feed, but if you think about some of the places in West Africa, you had a quarantine on the country. Those countries last year did not plant for their agricultural needs. So coming this spring, we're going to have a huge, huge need to feed entire nations in Africa that didn't plant any agriculture for this year. So what are we talking about? We're talking about an inefficient path. It's an inefficient market. It's an inefficient path. The system itself is inefficient. So if we go back to focusing on disasters, what are we talking about? What do you need after a disaster? You need clean water, you need nutritious food, and you need shelter. And when the disaster hit, your local food and other suppliers generally are displaced or destroyed. And where are those teams? So what happens currently is, the UN, USAID, other groups that do a very good job organizing and marshaling efforts, but there's no close by repository of supplies for them to call. They have to pick up the phone, call the food companies. They have to call the logistics companies. They need to call the shelter companies. They have to organize all these things. Then usually it's outside of the window that can help people. It's 3 to 5 to 20 days away if you put it on a ship. To put something on a ship from the United States, send it over to the Philippines, it's going to be on a boat for 2 weeks. You've got huge issues with wasted time, inconsistent quality, logistical hurdles, and then that's going to result in food. You're going to have spoilage. And here's the case study. Everybody knows about the 2011 Japan earthquake. When the earthquake happened in Fukushima, Japan needed $600 million day one in relief supplies. $600 million. They were able to marshal about $120 million in about 4 months. That's an 80% unmet need of food and other critical supplies that went on in a country like Japan. Now, Japan's credit's good. They'll write the check. There didn't exist enough in the marketplace to get them as quick as they needed it. If you look at Haiti, Haiti's got its own other issues because Haiti kind of looks the same today as it did in 2010. But if Haiti needed $48 million overnight, they got $2 million in. That's a 95% unmet need. Now, everybody's going to donate, and we're going to send supplies, and everyone should do that. But the amount that we can get to them and the amount that is needed, the gulf is huge. And then there's the last one that everybody knows about. You've got Typhoon Haiyan. And this is the CNN on November 12th. You've got Brigadier General Paul Kennedy saying we only have a week to save them. And that's a very true statement. In medicine, you have the golden hour. And the golden hour is if after someone has a stroke or a major accident, you've got an hour to fix these problems or generally they're going to pass away. The golden hour in disasters is about 7 days. After 7 days, the morbidity increases like a hockey stick and just skyrockets. So you have individually without one thing, you can last 3 days without water. You can last about 3 weeks without food. You can last about 3 months without adequate shelter before you start having morbidity issues. You combine all of those things, you've got about a 7-day window to help people or things get really bad. It leads us to this picture, and this picture is very powerful, and it kind of floored us when we saw it. This was by a photojournalist from the UK. This was during Typhoon Haiyan. He saw a woman walked into a building with 3 children. And the building was only half there anyway. It was a business that was kind of toppled over. And she came out with 1. And he asked her why. And she said, "We've heard through the crowd that we have no water and that we have no food. And we've not had it for 3 days. They are now telling us that we won't have any for possibly a couple of weeks. I know we are not going to make it, and I had to pick 1 child to save." I don't care if that's the Philippines or Africa or the United States or anywhere. In this day and age, this was 2013, 2014, 2015, those decisions should not have to be continued to be made. We have the technology, we have the supplies, we have the money, we can help these people. It's just an inefficient path right now. And that's, that we're hoping that we can combat these decisions people make all over the globe every year. So what do we want to do? What does GFE want to do? We want to just get everything in a nice straight line like we've got here on this graphic. We invest in assets that are rapidly deployable, that are strategically placed, that are nutritionally balanced, and that maintain at least a 25-year shelf life. Using this, we can significantly mitigate the logistical issues. We can deploy these in whole or via single truck, or we can break down our assets into pallets of food and get them to other people using helicopter, truck, small watercraft. So when the disaster strikes, the government agencies can act. They can call the Global Food Exchange on the phone, or they can go to our online marketplace. We can get our logistics moving. We can see what assets they need. We can get them into the affected location a lot quicker. So what are we doing here? We're trying to do well by doing good. We purchase at a discount to market because we purchase in bulk. We offer streamlined solutions to the existing problems. We process the food in a way, and I'll show you some pictures of our processing as well, that allows the food to last up to 25 years. That takes the spoilage issues out of the equation. That takes the refrigeration issues out of the equation. Allows us to work a lot easier and allows that food to get there in a form that's a lot more nutritious. And we also offer water. So our assets are food relief vaults, water relief vaults, shelter relief vaults, and a combination thereof. So this is what a food relief vault is. And this photo, which I will blow up on the following part, but the photo, that's a 40-foot container. On the left side of it is all the food that goes in there and all of the other supplies. Our food relief vault is designed to be a complete off-grid system, meaning that comes with cook stoves, that comes with non-combustible fuel, that comes with water filtration units. So as long as there's a source of water, that could be contaminated water, brackish water, and other things, you can clean the water inside of what we supply in the vaults, and you can open up the vault, you can be serving food in 90 minutes. Each FRV contains enough food to feed 650 people, 2,100 calories a day for 30 days, and comes with the supplies. Doors open, you don't need any power, you don't need any generators, you're ready to go. So we also have water relief vaults and shelter relief vaults. Now the water relief vaults are in a 40 and 20-foot container depending on the size. This is for a large flood, so if you use the example for Sandy. If a neighborhood flooded, which they all did in Sandy, you could put one of these FRVs on the back of a truck. You could move it down the street as you go. You can be pumping out bad water, including salt water, and out of a facility or a building, which is bringing that building back online. And on the other side, you're doing 20, 50, 100,000 gallon per day of potable drinking water for those neighborhoods. These systems were used in Haiti to work on to pump out the buildings, and they've used these also in the United States for chemical spills and other things. They're very robust, very powerful systems. The last is a shelter relief vault. Marine standard, you can comfortably house 32 people. If you need to house 64 people in a maximum density format, you can do that. All of our tents come with U.S. military and FEMA approved designs, and they've got soft solar on the top, so you've got some light throughout the night, and it's a very, very nice shelter. Those can be left behind, or we can pack those back up and put them back into the marketplace. So a little bit of how this works. Everybody's drinking from a fire hose as to what this is. So what we do is we take an investor, and we've raised private funds. Those are private funds or the investors invest into our private fund, which then the funds that were designed specifically for Global Food Exchange orders from GFE our relief assets. They order FRVs, water relief vaults, shelter relief vaults. We then deliver the title to the investors and store those relief assets in our facilities all over the globe. We position them globally in various stages so that because you can't pick where a disaster is going to be. If someone could show me how to pick where the next disaster is going to be, I'd be very happy. The fund lists them on the marketplace, and then once the disaster occurs, the buyers will log on to Global Food Exchange, see what assets are available where. They will then wire the money into our online marketplace, which is transferred to the fund. The fund gives the title to the buyer, and the assets put on a truck, train, plane, boat, and sent over to the affected area, and we start the process all over again. These are our facilities and expansion. I know with the screen this is going to be a little bit, so I'm gonna just real quick here. If you can see these blue ovals, these are kind of the hotbeds for disasters globally. Kind of where things happen, whether it's disaster, conflict, or other things. We need to be just outside of that ring of fire. So as of right now, we are in Columbus, Ohio, Shreveport, Louisiana, Salt Lake City, Utah. We are expanding into the Middle East this year, into the Middle East and North Africa, probably in Dubai Humanitarian City. We will be, and then probably somewhere in Africa. And then we're looking to possibly expand into Peru in 2015 as well.
What are the little red dots?
Those are proposed facilities. So the green and yellow dots are GFE facilities. The red ones are where you would need to, if you want to solve the problem globally, we feel that that those are the facilities that we're going to need globally to solve that issue.
Okay.
Bob, you mentioned our board. I feel that we've, I can't thank our board enough. Richard went out and helped through other board members and through his efforts built what we feel is a world-class board. Former CEO of Prologis, the largest warehouse company in the world, he's on our board. You've got the former COO of the disaster management group based here in Colorado. They do 48 of 50 states. Nancy Tour, she's on our board. Dr. Chris Pitt, former executive vice president from World Vision, has handled disasters all over the globe. Was also in the UK Air Force as well. He's on our board. You've got former, chairs of the Institute of Medicine. Lynn Kidder, she's helping. She helped with our menu design. You've got gentlemen like Joe Ignat, who's in the family office space, helping on the investor side. General Dennis Reimer, former chief of staff, I believe he reported to Bush 1, was in the White House every day, now retired, helping us significantly with things in Africa. And you've got Ibrahim Martin Bey, the group president for Taylor DeYoung Investment Bank. They have done, I think, about $30 billion in infrastructure projects in Africa alone, leading the effort to get us to help out in the Middle East. So with that, I know that's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I will turn it back over to you if you can see me again, and I'm sure there are questions.
Well, I'm monitoring the questions that are on the screen. I don't see any. I have a bunch, and we had talked beforehand about whether I would have questions about the presentation, and you can rest assured that you won't have to answer anything except questions about the presentation. I have a lot. Okay, so one of the questions that came to mind for me is, this is all about disaster relief. Do you have any systems that are in place for non-disaster relief, when, especially the political situations that occur across you, or do you consider those disaster?
No, we focus on disaster relief because that's where the biggest inefficiency is. The biggest market really is food, is kind of food inefficiency as a whole. So you go with disaster relief, you've got, then I would say you've got conflict, and then you've got that conflict or political right below that. Below that you've got food security. The reason the Middle East keeps coming up is they've got both food security issues and conflict or issues going on right now. So you've got a region that imports 90 to 99% of its food. On top of that, they've got a lot of conflict going on there, meaning they're sending food out. So you've got that is a large effort for us. But people, when you talk about how does this solution work, people in America don't think about food security and food deficits. It's not in our brain. We've got a positive food debt. We don't have a deficit here. But you go over there and it's 90 to 99% imported. They think about that. They've got conflict on their doorstep. They've got refugee camps, and we're working right now working at 3 to 4 refugee camps, working on supplying those groups as well.
The other thing that kind of struck me was the number of events that how they've increased over the last 50 years. And I know you gave some quote-unquote explanation, but seems to me that it's a much bigger issue than I ever realized. So can you expand upon that just a little bit? Because is it all global changes that are driving all of it?
It's not all climate change. You've got, I think it's 80% of the world's population lives near a coast. 70 to 80. You've got 70 to 80% of disasters happen near a coast. You've got population increase in those areas that are most prone to disaster. So that's a big factor. You've got the media. You go back 50 years, things didn't get reported. So you've got those other issues, but they're still increasing. Just because of population, I mean, you've got a large increase, and then you add in let's take out if it's global warming, global cooling, any of that. Climate volatility is a real thing. I mean, you've got the polar vortex, you've got stronger storms, and there's studies after studies that now even thunderstorms in the U.S. that were historically okay are causing major issues, and that's happening globally.
Which brings up the other question that I had, which is the population increase. I mean, I don't know what it is. You probably have a better idea, but I'm guessing that the population is doubling every few years now, and that there's a point at which we're going to have too many people to feed, regardless of disaster.
Well, it's when I talked a little bit earlier, it's you've got to go back to either sustainable ag, you need to, and efficient agriculture production. I mentioned I have two examples. Dr. Chris Pitt and I were talking about there's countries in Africa that waste 40% of their production of agriculture. Use rice as an example. They're producing rice. Let's say the floor of rice is 10 cents a pound. Usually it goes for 70 to 80. When it gets below a certain area, they just throw it on the ground, side of the road. People that have traveled into these countries have seen it all. Costa Rica, people, I know for a fact when the bananas come ripe, they get as many as they can to the marketplace. They take the biggest, best bananas off. And I know a gentleman who owns a facility in Costa Rica, and he gets paid by these farmers to dump truckload after truckload off the cliff into the ocean of bananas. They pay him to throw them out. Pineapples in these regions. So you've got all this waste that, what do? Well, you freeze dry, dehydrate all that food in the proper manner, and now you can store that with the new technology for 20 to 25 years and hold 99% of the value.
So you're saying perishables like bananas and pineapples are something that you can create sustainable food in what form, I'm curious, for 25 years?
Most people have seen it. It's astronaut food, camping food. It's kind of, how it looks. But you freeze dry or dehydrate it. Where the technology really came up that allows you to do this also is the Mylar bag. So these 7-layer Mylar bags, if you properly process it and then store it in these Mylar bags, blast it with nitrogen, throw an oxygen absorber in there, seal that bag, and then store that as long as it's above -20 Fahrenheit and below 80. That'll last for 25 years, 99% nutritional value.
Now, do you have to add water to it to make it edible?
So when you reconstitute, you can eat it dry. The fruit you can eat dry. The yogurt you can eat dry. I do it all the time. But if you're going to do, we do complete meals. So we'll do fettuccine Alfredo. You're going to need to add water and heat to that. So.
Very interesting. Okay. So just give me a minute here
while you keep asking questions, I'm going to pull up some pictures we can run through while you're asking.
Okay.
I know that we want to be cognizant of the hour.
Right. We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So you're showing your vaults off, huh?
Yep.
So one of the other facts that you threw out there is that 1/3 of the population every decade goes through a 30-day period without food or water.
Yes.
And I assume that that's a consistent percentage, even though the population is increasing.
It's if you go back, you can't really. The data goes back about 50 years, and you can project it out. You get about 2 billion people every decade. That number will go up, but you also have a lot of that. The bad part is a lot of that are the same people over and over again. I've never been displaced. The majority of America and Europe's never been displaced. So
that's why I was just going to ask, where does that tend to occur? I'm guessing Africa would be the primary place.
Well, they talk about, and I'm running through. So these are our 40-foot containers. Most people know what they look like. This is the inside of our inside of the warehouse, pre-processed food. And then this is one of our one of our blenders, and then that's the Mylar bag right there. That's some of our food right there. That's apple, blueberry, granola. Those are the bags. You put those bags we put them into these buckets like this. That will then, so it's in the bag and then in the bucket. Both are sealed. Now as long as that bucket is kept, and I'll get it there. There's one of them. That'll last 20 to 25 years. So to answer your question, the majority of these, you've got the Pan-Pacific region, which has got serious issues and constantly does. If those areas happen quite a bit. Parts of Africa, those are the ones that are happening the most.
And in the combination containers, is there a water purification system built into it, and how big are they?
Well, in the combo containers, you get a little bit of everything. So you get a smaller water system, you get some shelter, you get some food. But the majority of our response has been individual containers of each type. But in the FRV, you get what's called jerry cans. They look like a gas can, and they'll do about anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 liters per can, depending on the size of them. So I want to show you the other thing, Bob, is that when we take the water out, we take everything out, you reduce it down to 25% of its normal size. So what you're looking at right now is actually 1 million meals. That's 1 million complete meals in that small space.
Would that fit in a container right there?
No, I'll show you what each one of those rows is a container. Like I'm standing right there in front of Vault 9.
Okay.
We package them outside of the steel container. There's some yogurt. You can eat that dry. We package them outside of the steel container. This one, now you can see it a little bit bigger, in a complete vault. So if we get the order, they load the container and it's on the truck. I mean, we can have that loaded in 30 minutes and be on the road. But each vault, using the yogurt example, each food relief vault is packaged complete together, palletized, ready to go. So I don't have a warehouse with one shelf full of yogurt, one shelf full of rice. These things are pre-staged, ready to go. They're not in the container because a full container is very, very hard to move around inside a warehouse. But those containers, when you're on a boat or on a ship, that's pretty easy. You get that into the airport, you open the doors, now you start feeding people.
Okay, I may have misunderstood something. If you have a full 40-foot container like that, if it's all food, how many people or how many meals would that contain?
Our FRVs, here, I'll go back. That FRV right there will feed 650 people 3 meals a day for 30 days.
Perfect.
That's 58,500 meals. That's also all of the supplies you need to cook those meals. And all you need is a water stream. You don't need power. And that water can be contaminated. That comes with jerry cans. That comes with an entire pallet of fuel, non-combustible. It's called ready fuel. You and I could be driving down the road in a car, and I could be cooking in the back seat, and with the windows closed, and we wouldn't get sick from this fuel.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you to address. We have about 5 minutes left, and
Sure.
I'm still not seeing any questions from the audience, so I'm going to ask this, and I'm going to give you kind of two things to consider. One is the organization itself. You mentioned that it's a non-profit, benevolent organization. I assume it's a U.S.-based entity, is it?
We're not we are 100% for profit. We are not a nonprofit.
I'm sorry.
We work with nonprofits. If I was a nonprofit as well, I'd be competing for donor dollars. So I am for profit.
Okay, and then what kind of structure is the organization, and kind of explain that a little bit from a investor's perspective.
So we are a U.S.-based LLC. We have an online marketplace, warehouse, manufacturing. The investment perspective, the investment funds are formed specifically to invest into assets for GFE, but are separate entities. So we use an investment fund model. We have 4 right now, 1 international, 3 domestic. The one I can talk about because they're public marketing is the U.S. Food Fund, and they are 506C Jobs Act crowdfunding public marketing fund. So they're out there raising assets, and they're financial office based in Atlanta, and their assets are managed by us in our Salt Lake City warehouse and some in Columbus. So yeah, so we use a investment fund model that's separate from the exchange to create the assets.
So you kind of hit my sweet spot when you mentioned crowdfunding. I know that's what we both started talking about a couple years ago. What's the latest on crowdfunding for the average guy? I think at this point, in my understanding, is that you still have to be a certified investor to be working across state lines. Can you fill us in briefly on that?
I know a little bit. I know that the state of Texas basically said they're just going to do their own for non-accredited and accredited because they wanted the oil industry to get involved. I know there's some other states that have been pretty forward-thinking. Since you and I last talked, where we've mostly done our work is the 506C public marketing hedge funds. Those are accredited only. They're always going to be accredited only.
Right.
But what they will have is they have the ability they could take out an ad on TV, they could take out an ad on the radio, they could take out an ad in a newspaper.
Right.
So, where you could never do that before.
Right. So for the edification of the audience, the crowdfunding legislation has been in limbo from a federal standpoint. States have taken on we're tired of waiting, we're going to do this on our own. However, the asset that you're buying, the people that are investing, all have to be within the state boundary. So you can't, unless you're an accredited investor, which means you can't go across state lines.
I think they're starting to go away from that state line boundary. I know there's some groups out there that are moving forward. I read an article that the SEC is going to kind of start. The Jobs Act was written, great law. Couldn't get the rules out. I think they're finally starting to, and I don't want to name them because I don't know exactly where they're at and all of that. But I mean, we've looked at a few of them. We were contacted by one, but really, where I'm at is that other part of the Jobs Act, which is extremely powerful, from the marketing of investment dollars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the last question, and that is, what's the one takeaway you would like everyone that's been on this broadcast to walk away from this presentation with?
I would just say know your food. Know the food system. I mean, this is take disasters and conflict out of it. You've got a serious issue when it comes to food in the world and feeding yourselves going forward. So I definitely would say know your food. That's pretty much it. And thank you guys for your time, for having me. I know it's like drinking from a fire hose when you hear about what we're doing, but if there's any questions, I'm sure they're going to put my email address out, all the web links, and we're happy to answer any questions moving forward.
Well, thanks for being on. We appreciate it. For those of you who are still with us, the next call is scheduled in 2 weeks, which will be the 21st. Again, same time, same bat station, 1 p.m. On the 14th of January. Thanks for joining us, Jason. You've been a great guest, and we look forward to chatting offline on this.
Yep. Thanks for having me, and Bob, thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.